Hello, hello, hello. How is everyone doing? It's Rene Byrd, and I'm about to start another installment of the Who Am I talk. I've got an amazing guest that's coming shortly. Her name is Vivienne Braidwood, and I'm really excited for us to talk all things business. Now, at this point in time, I can just imagine everyone's a little bit confused what's going to be happening when we come out of this amazing, long-winded lockdown. So having this beautiful guest has been absolutely out of this world. So I'd like to introduce you to Vivienne Braidwood, and we're going to talk everything business. I hope you guys are having a fantastic evening and getting excited about the new weekend we've got ahead of us. So give me 1 second. Just waiting for the lovely lady. Hello.
Hi.
Oh, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And yourself?
Oh, it's so lovely to finally have a chat with you.
Yeah, it feels odd being on the show because I've been watching you with interest. I was particularly interested in you did a piece on a Harley Street therapist,
Oh,
and then I think about 2 weeks later you did a piece on a mother and daughter beauty business up
that's
north.
right. Yes,
And
81
I
Rose
have to
Garden.
say, thank you for giving
You're very
people this
welcome.
platform to help one another with advice and inspirational stories. It's been amazing. It's been one of the
Oh,
blessings, I
thank you
think, of
so
this
much. I thought
lockdown.
it'd be a good opportunity while we was on lockdown. As you know, I'm a singer-songwriter first, and for wear a few other hats. And I said, I can't make it about myself. It has to be about other people, and I've got to use my platform for purpose. And
Yes.
me and the team sat down and thought, there's loads of brands and experts, people out there right now who want to share their story. So I thought it'd be an amazing opportunity to do that. So you're very welcome. It was
Yeah.
absolute pleasure to have you.
Yeah.
And
I
how
mean,
have you been?
but I've been good, actually.
Yeah,
I've been very good.
that's good.
As you know, I sold my businesses 2 months before lockdown.
Yes.
I didn't have a crystal ball. I didn't know lockdown was coming. I was just very, very fortunate.
Wow.
But I did have an exit strategy because, there were reasons why I wanted to sell and move on to different projects and address some health issues. So
Mm-hmm.
from that perspective, lockdown has actually been quite positive.
That's good.
And I was inspired by, people like yourself to actually help. And I've been still working, but for free, consultancy services
Oh,
for some of
wow.
your listeners, actually, because I did invite some
Okay.
people to listen
And that's
where I knew,
amazing.
having been in their shoes, having had a
Mm.
bricks and mortar business, so I had
Mm-hmm.
a few salons, high rent and rates. I felt quite choked up thinking what they must be going through.
Yeah.
So it was a case of reaching out, how can I help?
Yeah. That's a
And that's
beautiful
been
thing
quite
to do.
interesting, just assisting people with their business strategy for getting back on
Mm-hmm.
track, or if they have issues with cash flow. And so, yes, I'm thankful that I can actually, talk to your audience about this
Yeah.
in case, anyone kind of needs
Wonderful.
that advice. And if anyone has any questions, please
Yes.
fire away.
And what I want to do is start from the beginning. So this lovely lady online is a literally multifaceted entrepreneur. I mean, she's been involved in everything from finance to retail to beauty to health. So just tell me, how did it all start? Where did it all begin?
Beauty was accidental, actually. If I go back, I came to this country as an immigrant. I'd grown up Wales and in the north, and London was a place I came to as an adult in the
Okay.
90s. So I
Hmm.
studied finance and started out in the banking world.
Okay.
And strange
Yes.
as it sounds, I love numbers. It sounds,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so I worked as an analyst. I worked as a project manager,
Uh-huh.
etc. And I really
Mm-hmm.
loved all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just became a little bit sort of disillusioned with the way in which, it happens to some people sometimes where you begin to question the value that you're adding, the difference that you're making. And what would
Mm-hmm.
happen, each time we had a restructure in the business that I work for, you have a new, CEO or manager come in. And I
Mm-hmm.
found that I could kind of manipulate the numbers to
Mm-hmm.
suit whoever, whatever the regime was, whatever they were trying to prove or disprove. So I
Mm-hmm.
became a bit disillusioned. I thought, well, that's just politics.
Of course. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
didn't, I wasn't engaged with any end customer. At that level, it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of, your colleagues and you're, crunching numbers, etc. And I just thought, actually, I want to make a difference. So the money was great. I can't complain. The lifestyle was great, but it just jarred with me. And I think that's just, everyone has to kind of make their own decision as to, you know, their purpose in life and the value they want to make. But I still very much love numbers. And at that stage, I've been involved in some little, you know, ventures, you know, here and there. And there was a massage company that my business partner was opening. And initially I was just, you know, helping to finance. I was an investor.
Right.
In that, yes.
Interesting.
And then she said, can you look at my business plan? And I said, okay. So I had a look at her business plan, and we pretty much, you know, we improved on it. And I kept thinking, well, you know, these people you're going to employ to do massage, you know, you're limiting yourself. A lot of those people will have the skills to do other things. So why just limit yourself to just this? And then we, you know, looked at the business model, and then we came up with something quite innovative, actually, which was, rather than selling treatments, selling time.
Okay.
2003, unheard of. I mean, now everyone thinks, well, everyone's doing fast beauty, 10-minute treatments. But then most of the top suppliers that we went to, big names that operate today, told us impossible. What can you achieve in 10 minutes? And most of them, if not all, have launched these, you know, rapid results, fast beauty services. Exactly. So my business partner and I, you know, I remember us sitting in the garden, you know, with a glass of wine, you know, in the winter, coming up with these ideas. We were on a roll, you know, and she said, look, why don't you come in on this with me? Because at that stage, the business plan was completely rewritten. And she said, you need to come in, you know, with me. And I thought, I don't know anything about beauty. And I'm a little bit, you know, of a tomboy, and I wasn't really into that sort of thing. And I always found salons intimidated me, you know, like that scene out of Pretty Woman when she goes in and the three Maries sort of, you know,
You're a beautiful woman, I must add, a beautiful woman.
You're very kind. So I went in with her, and it was really strange because I remember when we were looking at sites, and we were looking at Oxford Circus, Piccadilly Circus, and those things were just like pieces on a Monopoly board to me, especially not being a Londoner. Yeah. And then suddenly we had a site, a big site, you know, there. And before I knew it, one thing led to another, and boom, the business was opened. Now, I still stayed in finance, and I also was in accountancy as well. But the business went into distress, which is something I'm going to talk about, because the current pandemic is a form of distress. So the business went into distress, and my business partner asked me, can you, you know, come in? I need help. She was trying to speak to a turnaround specialist. Yes. And I said, I can do that. I can do that. And also I had a lot of money on the line. So I came in. It did mean pouring a lot more money in. So we had to really make sure it was the right decision to proceed. But because the concept was really very new and unheard of, you know, people were buying chunks of time, 5, 10, 20 minutes, etc. And we would customize the services to get results in those times. And so there was a period of, you know, the market coming to terms with what we'd innovated and what we were putting out there. And this is before all this sort of Twitter and, you know, now fast beauty is just not. That's
crazy. Like, I just want to stop you for 1 second. So this lady, so your brand was Cucumba.
Cucumba, yes.
So you've heard, ladies and gentlemen, about the blow, about all these brands that popped up much, much later. So you really had that foresight way before any of these. Wow.
Basically, yeah. The beautiful thing about the internet is, you know, once you put something out there, it's there, and it's dates and time stamped. And I must say that was a source of frustration that we didn't, you know, get the acknowledgement at the time. So we even had copycats who came out with similar things, and the wording was almost identical. You know, it was a little bit frustrating, but we took it as a sign of, you know, they say imitation is
That's correct.
A form of flattery. So we thought, we're onto something. And the great thing is, a lot of the, you know, the big hitters in the industry, the suppliers who said it's not possible to deliver this in this time, we'd say to them, well, surely you can produce a product that, you know, you spray a client and that product disinfects and softens the skin and you know, why does a facial have to take an hour and a half? People don't have that time. Surely there's a product that, you know, you put it on the skin and it, you know, it works straight away. So you could reduce the times and get these really good results in these short periods of time. And the answer was no, 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 no. And I still have a lot of those emails. I've kept them. Wow. Because I have a relationship with a lot of those suppliers now, very positive relationship. But I'm not afraid to go to them and say, you know, what's changed. And I just think we were a little bit ahead of our time then, which explains why, you know, I think we could have done more marketing. We should have had a bigger marketing spend at the beginning. And we didn't factor in the fact that we'd have to not just convince the market, but convince the therapists who were working for us. They were like, what can you do in 10 minutes? You know, I've been doing it in 1 hour all these years. And so the distress, the business distress meant that I had to step in. And when I stepped in, all I didn't factor in is that I would still be there 15 years later.
Wow.
And running it by myself, because my business partner is older and she retired.
Okay,
so that was unexpected, but no regrets. And I've loved it. And during that time, I thought, let me get qualified as a beauty therapist as well. I just like to learn and understand the nuts and bolts of anything that I kind of get involved with. Yeah.
And that's commendable, because the fact you was the business anchor to it, you also understood the beauty. So then you can then look on the shop floor and see actually the level and the standard that they were delivering as your beauty therapist. So you're actually seeing the full circle, huh?
Exactly. I think I am of the school of thought that, you know, I have many friends, colleagues who are, you know, managers, like when I was a project manager, and I don't think you need to know them, you know, there's a certain level of detail that you don't need to know, and your position can still be credible, but you need to kind of understand. But what I found in the beauty industry was that, you know, often the therapists and other stakeholders in the industry they'd look at you, even though your business has been running for a decade and a half in the centre of London, they're like, well, are you a therapist? What do you know? That was frustrating, because as an analyst, you just break things down, you can understand a process, and, you know, your mind is so analytical. I think it was an advantage that I wasn't a therapist when we started, because I was able to ask, why does this take an hour and a half? I don't understand. And why do you have these 5 processes, these 5 steps, when if you just created a product, or, you know, this particular process could be eliminated? And that was really helpful, and it was lovely to see the industry move in that way. You know, it was really good. Yeah,
that's amazing. Well, that's so commendable what you've done, and I'm sure you've got some lessons from that experience that now you're going to look back and go, how I could tweak it, I can make it better, I can make it even more expandable. One of the things, what makes me wonder, that would have been an American, the theme that you have is very American, because no one's got time in America. They're working so long hours. So really, it's like we've now only caught up with that mindset, that way we work, you know, the fast pace. We wasn't moving at that pace before. So you was actually way ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of feedback. If you imagine, we're in, do you know Carnaby Street? Yeah, so we were around there, and so a lot of the magazine houses were there, all the big magazine houses, Turner. So a lot of people who are traveling back and forth with America, all over the world, and they would say that, look, you see this in America, it's all over the place, but it wasn't in the UK. If you look at maybe the Scandinavian model now, maybe that's where we were 10, 15 years ago, where you have to make an appointment. There was no such thing as walking in, you know, that not for, you know, middle to high end brands.
Yes.
We launched, so 2004, we had internet bookings. If anybody knows of any salon that had internet bookings, please let me know. You know, we created our own apps. When they first came out, we brought a techie guy in to do that. So we really, and I think it helped with us not being therapists. And I think, you know, there was a big value in that. Yeah. And we felt, you know, a lot of people were taking us to one side and saying, what you're doing is really innovative, creative. We love this. And we did appear in, you know, every magazine and in the papers. It was, you know, it was fantastic. And I guess for me, it got to a stage where suddenly the differential was, you know, reduced. I mean, everybody was doing it, and some people were coming in and starting to compete on price, you know, which is never a good thing when you've just been slaughtered by Groupon, and, you know, we're the industry that gets hit by the Groupons, where consumers don't, you know, understand that if you're getting 75% off something, you know, and the middleman's taking 50% plus VAT on that, you know, where does that leave?
That's correct. There's no
service provider.
There's nothing.
Exactly. And it became a little bit, you know, the passion and love and the enthusiasm that I had for that. When you have consumers who, you know, they care about where they source their food, they care about the material of the clothes they wear, but they don't think about, you know, in terms of our industry, they think, wow, I can get it around the corner in the Vietnamese place for £10. Okay, you know, we're insured, we pay our taxes, you know.
That's correct.
We're ethical, we pay minimum wage and above, and people don't really, I'm not sure why that is.
It's the monopoly, isn't it? It's a monopoly because there's so much available, but they forget that even though it's available, it's keeping the same level and standard. So that's so you can Groupon, you can I forgot the names of them now, you can do all of that, but really are you getting the standard and building that relationship, that client base, that consistency is what some people lose, you know.
Yeah, I mean, clients seem, to be fair, less concerned with the relationship, because before that, yes, I mean, it's a very personal service. You know, we touch them, we see them naked, we advise them on things that, you know, have a big impact on the way they look and feel. But we found that, you know, and again, I'll touch on this later when I talk about, you know, technology and things like that, just revolutionised the world. They could just click, click, click and find whoever could offer them that service within, you know, 5 minutes, within a 5-mile radius, the cheapest cost. And you found that people started to have this kind of low-cost mentality to a certain degree. They just went where the deal was.
And
I did write to Groupon, and I did a small campaign, group off, saying you're damaging. You're damaging.
No, because it is. If you, as I said, you don't, as a consumer of those opportunities, think deeper and how it can affect. You know, we're all guilty looking for something which is a little bit cheaper, but actually the impact it has on the person that owns that business actually is quite incredible.
Yeah. And I've been accused a few times of being a bit of a big mouth, because some customers would be so vocal. They'd be paying with their Coots card, and for anyone that knows how much you need to have in a bank to have a Coots card, and they'd be saying, oh, can I get it cheaper? You know, so and so in my neighbourhood does it cheaper. And I'd ask them what they did for a living, like if they were a lawyer, a solicitor, or, you know, like what you do. I never dream of asking you to give me a 75% discount. So, you know, why would you think? And one of the results of that, Rene, is that our industry has become very fragmented, really fragmented. So now you have a lot of therapists going it alone, working from their homes.
That's correct.
You know, a room in the home, or mobile therapists.
Mobile, that's right.
Exactly, and this is the result of all of that happening. It's less and less sustainable to have these, you know, high overheads, you know, rent and rates, etc. And you know, that's a little bit unfortunate. And I'm not surprised that many of the UK high streets now you're seeing those services, you know, disappear. You know,
and I think you're completely right. I think throughout all industries, it's done a complete switch. You know, we have had, because of this pandemic, now have gone online. Everything we used to do by face to face, we're now trying to transitioned to online. And things that you can do in the privacy of your own home. Your own home is now your haven. You do everything there. You know, we're going to have dinner parties as opposed to going to restaurants. So everything's on a shift, isn't it? Yeah. But I'm really excited that you did that, because that tells me you're beyond, you're in the future. So I'm excited to see what your next venture is, because if you did that then.
So am I. Yeah, I think adaptability is the key. You just have to be really flexible in your thinking, agile in your thinking, and really adaptable, because life by definition is change and uncertainty.
Yes.
I think they forget that. I think most people feel out of their comfort zone if they are uncertain. But the reality is that's what life is, and you wouldn't want to be able to map out, to know exactly what's going to happen minute by minute until the moment of your death. That's part of the beauty of life, and yet we are very uncomfortable. And I know when I worked in as a project manager in change management, you know, whenever we changed, whatever we changed, you know, it could be, I know in the banks, there was a time when if you called or you wrote in to your bank, your branch would receive the call or the letter.
That's correct.
And I was part of a project that took all that out and centralized it or sent it off to India. And it changed a lot of the way people worked, the way that consumers could interact with their banks. And people were freaked out by it. And the amount of change management that's around kind of managing that uncertainty. And the funny thing is, people are often resistant to change.
Yeah.
They don't like it. They feel very negative about it. And often, I mean, how many of your listeners, you know, your viewers, looking back, some of the best things that happened to them,
Yes.
you know, it was because something, you know, change happened that they were resistant to. But afterwards, you were in a better position than before. And I think you have to kind of have that mindset. Fear of the unknown does not mean that the unknown doesn't bring a better tomorrow, you know, and a better you.
I think it's trust. I think people need to feel that they trust you to change something. And I think we have to be really careful how we message a change.
Yes.
You know, so we think of when the banking industry shifted from walking into a branch to an app. That's a massive step for a certain demographic of people that are used to bringing in their book. And also, some of them want to just have that conversation. That's the time for them to interact with somebody, because they might not all the time. The elderly people, they're old school. They're going to stay in that space. So it's how it's messaged to make them feel comfortable and feel trustworthy. But I think what's happened over time, you've had to adapt. You've had to learn the WhatsApps and all the social media and how to do remote. And the great one we're using now is Zoom. You know, people were using that in the business world. Now everybody's using it. So the whole world's had to evolve, whether they liked it or not, you know?
Exactly. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because everybody you need something to motivate you sometimes to take action. I know, you know, I am, in terms of technology, you know, I'm a bit of a technophobe, and it's only when I really have to, you know, get my head around it. I know many friends who, for the first time, got onto social media. I know business owners who, for the first time, got onto social media. I was contacted by a PR company, and last week they scheduled in back-to-back 20-minute sessions for their clients, and it was all on Zoom. You know, and they sent through the items they wanted to talk to you about, the actual physical products. And the lady, when I spoke with her, she was like, oh, you know, she has to have someone do all of that setup for her. But now she was so confident, and she was explaining to her husband how to set up social media, you know, and she would have probably been in her 50s, I'm guessing. And I thought, you know, that's great. And I do some volunteer work as well, where I speak to the vulnerable people who are, you know, isolating, alone, or the elderly. And again, I'm surprised how many of them have, you know, smartphones, the elderly. And you're able to just, you know, communicate, and they're telling you about images that they're sending to people, and, you know, going on Google Maps. And you think that's good, actually, because, you know, there's a huge uptake in that technology. And I'm not, I think that's a good thing.
I mean, as we've been speaking, lots of people have been singing your praises. I said, you're wonderful, you're amazing. So that's fantastic. Natalie, loads of people have been. So I'm sure you're adding nothing but value to your audience, to people in business. So, I mean, the big question, a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the circumstance of some of this, people's business situations, people being furloughed. Some people, unfortunately, haven't been able to reactivate their business, sadly, which has been functioning for years. And I think that's really sad, because this pandemic has literally changed someone's life, where they were self-sufficient, they weren't relying on any government funding, and all of a sudden they've got to declare and share all with the world, and it's not nice. So what's your thoughts on, you know, the business, moving it forward, going forward? Anyone that wants to make us change, because you know what, I don't think after today, after this pandemic, that people are going to be the same in the way they do business. Some people might actually go, I'm not going to be working those hours anymore. I spend time with my wife, my children. So it's not going to be necessarily negative. They're going to just evolve and say, this worked for me, and I now need to work smarter than harder. So the business owners, what kind of thoughts do you have for them to think about the strategy coming out of the pandemic? And anyone that wants to start a business, because I don't think they should be scared. Yes, we are on the look of a recession, there's no question. But sadly, in some circumstances, even recessions, people gain. You know, some businesses through this pandemic, people have actually benefited tremendously because they're online anyway. So it's quite a few things, but what do you think we should, you know, what suggestions would you give to these people?
In terms of your question about, you know, starting businesses, you know, historically, you know, but people start businesses, you know, at times like this, it's a great opportunity, because when there are problems and you present a solution to the problem, then people want that. And if you look at the industries who've thrived during this, in terms of the food, you know, if you Tesco's or the online food shopping, or the ones that make the food ready to go. And there are a lot of people, as you said yourself, who've moved to online and digital and still supplying their services that way. And they're actually reaching a wider audience because they're not having to book a class of 6 or 12 people, whatever it is, if it's yoga or training. They can now train hundreds of people and reach hundreds of people. So what I've noticed is they dropped their prices to reflect the channel that they're now using. But certainly from my conversations with them, the revenues are coming in and increased from before. So there are definite, they might be termed winners and losers. But I think, historically, I wouldn't say to people now is a bad time to start a business. There are a lot of people who, exactly what you just said, you've been at home now for 3 months and you're assessing, your situation. And there are many people who have reignited passions that they had. There's a local lady who's baking the most delicious cakes and delivering. And she is, she's now thinking of opening a bakery when all this is over. But she's tested the market. Something she wouldn't have done before this.
A lot of people took a leap of faith, didn't they? They took a leap of faith at this point. It was a very scary time, but they said, you know what, I've got to utilize my time in the most positive way. Exactly. Unfortunately, some it's been really tough for, but they've tried to draw into things, Exactly. The amount of people that have asked me, Vivienne, do you think now is a good time to start a business? It tells me that they're thinking about that. And I've been asked that so many times. I'm not surprised to hear that a lot of business ideas come out when, for instance, ladies are on maternity leave. You got that, exactly. And also they say necessity is the mother of all invention. Similarly, adversity. So I think whatever problems you're faced with, anything that you think, that requires a solution, and there might be a market for that solution. Someone just said something. Sorry to cut you, Vivienne. Thoughts on the future. Organizations need to be flexible and open-minded in terms of current business. We need to give it another 6 months to see what happens and not give a negative. So 6 months they're projecting. Maybe we're in the second quarter, last quarter, or beginning of next year, I would say. Do you think that's fair?
Are they asking in terms of people going back in?
I think they're
looking
saying,
at their numbers to come back to where they expect them to be. What do you mean?
Yeah, I think organisations need to be flexible and open-minded. So I think they just need to give themselves 6 months to see what it looks like down the line. That's the impression I'm getting from.
You need to be flexible and adaptable. I mean, in the last 3 months, how many times have you heard, do this, don't do this? We know for certain this is X, and then actually, no, it could be Y. Yeah. So I think as an organisation, when you're kind of scanning the environment in which you're operating in, the regulatory environment has changed. Everybody, I think, should be receiving communications directly about, how you are, COVID-19 compliant, etc. So you're going to have to change the way you do business, but some of that change will be temporary, if that makes sense, and some of that change will be long term. So she's absolutely right. I think if you think, okay, we're going back in and everything will be normal, I think you'll get a shock. Things will have to change and adapt, and your mindset also, and things will continue changing and adapting. Over 6 months, a year, beyond. Yes. What I'd say about your other question about business owners, Rene, I know. I mentioned to you when I actually got into business. So before you actually open your doors and you start, doing your business, you have all this wonderful time to plan. You've got your business plan. You're not stressed by all these external factors. And then when you actually start doing the business, you find yourself working in the business as opposed to on your business. And that's one of the big reasons why businesses fail. Because as a business owner, you should be working on your business. You understand? In terms of, the strategy, the direction that you're wanting to take. But often business owners find the pressures, because I know with the salons, it didn't matter what I planned to do. As soon as my day started,
you shift.
Things, people, whether it's a staff member,
someone calls in sick,
a customer issue, a supplier issue, a site issue. Once the telecoms thing went down, we couldn't take payments, couldn't take bookings. It's just coming at you, and clients can access you through multiple channels now. It's not just walking through the door, telephone, online apps, Twitter, Instagram. And so the actual time to sit and work on your business and reflect, often doesn't happen, and you're putting out fires and you think, I'm moving forward. And then when you get a chance to kind of put your head above the water, have a look around, you've gone 5 miles in the wrong direction.
That's correct.
So lockdown is an opportunity for you to actually work on your business before you go back to working in your business.
I get it.
Exactly.
That makes sense. No, that's actually really good. That's really good, because you're right, you do, and you don't normally get this time. This has been an amazing time to really tweak, to fine tune, to think, to reevaluate, to re-strategize on anything that you're about to do.
Exactly.
Or want to do going forward.
Yeah, I think the key thing is to kind of reflect. So internally, look at what were your strengths and weaknesses, you know, historically to date, and be very honest about that. And if you feel you want to involve your team in that discussion, then do that. And then also reflect on your strengths and weaknesses, given what you know of the new normal.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes. And then you want to kind of scan your external environment and see what are all the factors that you now need to consider that will affect you. So we talked about, you know, the new regulation. I mean, I went to see my doctor this week, Monday. They just opened, and they came out in a hazmat suit. And
come out like from a film and a movie.
Yes, and it was just very different. Yeah. And it was very unnerving. Everyone was very nervous. There's one way in, one way out. It's a whole new world. So you need to, as a business owner, do your environmental scanning. Something you would have done when you set up your business, and something
risk assessment. Am I right?
Pardon?
Risk assessment, like a risk assessment.
Yeah,
effectively, maybe similar.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of names, pest analysis or PESCO, you know, that sort of thing, where you look at your political, economic, social, technological, competitive environment, and you're scanning to see, you know, how are these things impacting me? So technology was a massive game changer before the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, as we talked a little while ago, there's a huge uptake of technology. That's a big opportunity now, because you have a wider reach, you know, and people are engaged more, and you can build, you know, your brand using those channels, you know, find your clients using those channels. Digital marketing now, huge uptake. Yeah. You know, social media, if you weren't involved in that, that's, you know, great opportunity there. And so when you scan your environment, and that includes things like your competitors, because remember, your competitors are in the same boat as you. So you need to kind of, don't forget to keep an eye out to see what are they doing, because you might be able to learn something from them. But also, if you're trying to differentiate, because one thing I'm really, you know, big on is when you get back out there, don't compete on price. If you can afford it, don't compete on price. Cash flow is strapped, you know, for all businesses right now. And I think consumers I think there's a lot of love coming from consumers, and they understand kind of what's going on, and they want to support. So I don't think you should go there and panic and start slashing your prices. No, try to add value instead. So value added. So look at your competitors and think, what's my unique selling proposition? What's my magic? And try and work on those things, you know, and find a way to communicate those things. And I think once you've scanned your environment, so what they're all the things that are happening externally, you know, the environment you have to operate on, operate in, sorry. Within that, you're going to identify opportunities and you're going to identify threats. And then it's for you then to you know, build a plan that basically makes the most of those opportunities, you know, technology being a massive one, for instance, and tries to kind of minimize those threats as well.
No, it's interesting. So there's a lot of things. So I see about, you know, looking at your competitors, it's a takeaway, making sure you strategize and don't slash your prices, keep where you were. Obviously, depending a lot of, especially in the retail industry, they've got a lot of backstock. So they've had to try and, you know, find a way to, the sale that happened in spring and summer, they literally got so much stock they got to get rid of. And then sadly, because we haven't opened up our borders and the holiday season hasn't commenced, there are, you know, what do? The restaurants have not opened up yet. So people are not really going to be dressing up that much at home other than ourselves. So a lot of the retail industry are really stuck right now with a lot of overstock, aren't they, to know what they're going to do with it. So if individuals have got stock, you know, do they, as I said, it's not slash the prices, but they have to offer some competitiveness to what they're offering, their brand, isn't it?
Exactly. And you can use some of that stock we talked about, you know, how technology has changed the landscape, to engage your consumers, like run competitions, you know, have fashion shows, have people have their own fashion shows, maybe send a few items, you know, to, you know, your top spending clients, or there's different ways to, you know, engage people, and that stock then becomes your marketing expenditure, if that makes sense. So it's not wasted because you've used it and you've gained value from it. But what I'd say to people is avoid competing on price, because it's really a downward spiral. Someone can always go cheaper. And I just think with, you know, cash is king, and some of the things that are really hurting businesses now is the whole cash flow situation. Because I know a lot of landlords, if you're a bricks and mortar business, a lot of landlords are not giving you any concessions. People don't really understand this. And yes, business rates might be delayed, you know, you can defer the payment, but you still have to pay it. They haven't just said, oh, you don't need to pay your rates or taxes. So it's still a debt, and a lot of businesses are highly geared now, and a debt has to be serviced or repaid at some point. And that can have, you know, that's a bit of a chokehold for some businesses. So with cash being king, you know, whatever you do strategically, you really want to avoid competing on price until you absolutely have to. And people will pay. Yeah, they will. This is the thing, people will pay. If there's a value in what you're doing, you know, you're able to set yourself apart from the competitors, people will pay.
So that's a good strategy for while they're under the pandemic. So obviously we're hoping in July things will start, you know, moving in the direction that we expect. So the world will look different, as you said, you know, walking into a beauty salon, or if someone comes to you or whatever that situation is going to look very different. The retail industry, where we would all be waiting to try on an outfit, apparently they can't do that as much. Would you feel, I mean, how long is a piece of string, but how do you feel things will start coming back to get, you know, coming back into normality? You know, I have my thoughts. We're thinking maybe another 2 quarters. I would say by next summer we might see a little bit glimmer of hope. Not to say that the industries are not going to be functioning, but we're talking profit making and people feeling safer to make decisions and to do deals, things like that.
I'm an eternal optimist, and I never underestimate you know, the resilience, the determination, you know, the grit of that people have when they feel that their back is up against the wall. I am not a fan of the media with their doom and gloom prophecies. And if you look historically, you know, all the things they always tell you that are going to happen, that you should be fearful, all these things are going to happen. A lot of them don't happen, and some of them happen in a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy kind of way. I understand. If you keep hearing doom and gloom, and then that affects consumer confidence. I'm not surprised during the whole Brexit situation that many industries really suffered purely from consumer confidence. So if you look at you know, the housing market, estate agents would tell you people just didn't know about, you know, will I have a job, will I not have a job, what's going on? So a lot of people put things on pause, were building up nest eggs, and that was simply from, you know, all of that sort of scaremongering, what ifs, all that kind of stuff. And you know, so I am, you know, I'm very optimistic, and I think that people should just trust that once things reopen and you get back in, yes, it won't be easy, and yes, there will be challenges, but I mean, look at the innovations of you know, my local restaurants, you know, who were doing, you know, gourmet food, whatever. They're doing home deliveries now. Like, we had a set of friends who said, right, okay, this week, do you want to meet in the garden for some socially distanced food? We're going to bring fish and chips. And I was like, okay. They came round with like calamari and all this amazing stuff from a high street restaurant that I'd never been in. And they were doing this takeaway. You got a book online via Facebook and you pick it up. It was amazing. I've never heard of that business, and I live in the area. That's correct. Wow. And they really adapted. And I see it all over the place. People, you know, adapting their businesses to the situation like within lockdown, not even post lockdown, in order to make sure that they can utilize the stock, you know. And so I think that same resilience will flow through. As I said, there are people who started businesses, people who are providing, you know, courses online. I mean, how many of you have, you know, booked courses now online? And the prices have gone down because see, that is a price competition. That's about reflecting the fact that you've got this channel that's a lot cheaper. You're not having to rent a room and have a teacher, you know, in the room and have a limited class size. And
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, the schools, you know, I don't know if you have any
No, you're
sort of, you
completely
know,
right. I think they've had to really think about that, where things and be mindful of the audience, that their circumstances could be very different, and you need to
exactly.
give them the opportunity and
Yes,
help them, because as I said, but businesses now have to find how they can help their audience more than they've ever had. You
yes,
know, whereas before they were in their circle doing their thing, but now it's like, what can I offer the audience, the consumers, to be loyal? And they normally will be. People, we always go back to what we like, don't we? And
yes.
at this time, a lot of businesses have been called out, as you know, by trading standards, where they've literally put their prices up to a paracetamol was like £9.99 because it was in demand. You know, it was like, you know, when you're on Amazon, you're thinking, I'm sure that's not the price, but they realize the demand. But those people will be called out, and those individuals and businesses, people remember that, because
They
at desperate
remember,
time.
and they will damage their brand. I mean, compare
That's
that to
right.
someone like Admiral Insurance. I believe they
That's right.
gave all their policyholders £25 cash back, because obviously less cars on the
That's
road,
correct.
or no cars on the road, less
That's correct.
accidents, etc. I'm not with them, but I remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that. So people,
Yeah.
I mean, look at the hoo-ha that happened with certain high net worth individuals who decided to use the furlough scheme, the
Yeah.
government
Unbelievable.
scheme.
That was
Exactly.
a PR disaster, wasn't it? I mean, it's a fine line, because you know, in business, and we know that a lot of the money is not liquid; it's all tied up.
Yeah.
So, I can't speak, and I don't know the ins and outs of the technicalities, but a lot of the time they haven't got physical capital available to be
Yes.
able to dissolve, to make. And I think that's what we realized a lot of the time.
Yes.
But I was very excited about the people that did then use their own money to further, because that put
Exactly.
everything, didn't it?
Exactly. And
Put
that's the thing.
everything.
I think the difference now, because it's a shared experience,
Mm-hmm.
consumers will be a lot more compassionate and
Yeah.
understanding, and they will want
Mm-hmm.
to support. My experience when I went to the doctor this week was
Mm-hmm.
horrific. Had that been 6 months ago, I'd have written a letter of complaint. It was awful.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel for 1 second that I wanted to
Yeah.
complain. I
You're right.
understood, because I'm in it with them.
That's correct.
The fear on their faces. I wondered if the staff had even had a team meeting prior to opening. Had they actually gotten together? It seemed to me that, I mean, it was a different building to the one that I would have gone to. So maybe they were climatizing to the building. And as I mentioned, there was one way in and then a different way out. And it was just very strange. But my overall feeling was one of understanding and compassion. And I think you'll get that from clients. So you need to trust that, because you know, a lot of my clients before were people who also provided services. So you know, pass it on.
That's
Or pay
correct.
it forward. They're going to experience the same things,
Mm.
and no one's going to get it. You know, it's rare that things just kind of hit the ground running like that when you're forced to simply quickly change direction. So people will expect teething problems in the same
Yeah.
way that you might have had teething problems when you first opened your business, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
be very compassionate, you know, towards you around that. So I would just say a lot of the, you know, focus on the things that you can change and that you can do, because you know, when you write a business plan, it's not a crystal ball that predicts the future. It's just about you taking control of, you know, the plan of action, what you're trying to achieve, visualizing the end result, where you're wanting to go, and it keeps you grounded in the same way as an athlete that might have a goal, you know, that they want to achieve, a target. But things will move along the way. So your mindset has to be one of adaptability, and not being, business owners have a tendency to be really hard on themselves. They are their own
Yeah.
worst critics,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And if
Yeah.
this situation has shown you anything, it's the power of, you know, community and your support system. So in the same way as with what you're doing, which is incredible, and you know, I'm not the only person volunteering. Pretty much everybody that I speak to is like, what can I do to help? How can I help? And those support systems won't just dry up because UK PLC has opened for trading again. So don't forget that. So when you kind of hit the ground running and you're working in your business as opposed to on your business, you know what I mean?
Totally
I think
understand.
don't forget you have those support systems in place. Now, when I went to the doctors this week, what was interesting, it was a bit freaky because it was in central London and there was no one around. All the shops were closed, as in no clients. However, pretty much all the shops had workers in them, not staff, you know, refurbished, people doing refurbishments.
Okay, so they're getting
So
ready.
they're getting ready. I think, is Monday the date? It's Monday.
I think it's Monday though. Yes, that's the big
Yes,
open.
so
Yeah,
that will be
wow.
interesting to see kind of how that pans out the first few weeks. But I went down Oxford Street, Regent Street, you know, and pretty much all the shops had people in there doing refurbishment, so they're kind of ready to go. So yeah, that will be interesting to see, kind of, you know, watch this space. And I think people should still be careful about, you know, the social distancing and, you know, their health, the health of others, etc., and try to balance that with supporting businesses, because businesses do need our support now more than ever.
I think so. I think as well, because we have been under lockdown for so long, I think people are looking forward to the difference, the change, wanting to just be, you know, express themselves, engaging with people, clients, friends, family.
Yeah.
So I think it will naturally move in that direction. You know, it's caution anything that we do. But as you said, I definitely have to agree. I hope they keep that empathy, that compassion, that we've all looked after one another. People have been talking, looking after their neighbours and doing shopping for people and just sending love, even though you can't touch somebody. And I really hope that is not lost, because I think we were so busy in our world, running around busy, and nobody really knew each other at all. You know, some neighbours never spoke at all for years. But I think now people know who's on their street.
Exactly. And I think it's something that, you know, once in a lifetime, you know, type thing. And it has, for many people, it's been awful and tragic, but there has been, you know, magical moments within that. And you mentioned about people who, you know, might think, I don't want to go to work, 3-hour commute every day, I'm away from my kids. You know, I think it's a chance to just reflect on the way we work, and it has a domino effect on society. If you're not around to raise your kids, not by choice, but because you're trying to make a living, that does have an impact. You know, if you don't expect, you're not around to spend time with your family members, that does have an impact. And I think what people have seen now is that you don't always have to go to work.
That's correct.
And if you're just as productive, you know, one of the things for the business owners listening to this is, you know, one of your opportunities here, if you see that productivity has gone up and the new way of working, people working from home, and it really works, you know, trust that. And maybe rather than wait for, you know, your staff to come to you, there's so many people I know, I'm sure maybe the same for you, who were like, should I have the conversation? You know, is it too early to have the conversation? Well, I challenge any business owner listening, you have the conversation first. Like, you put it on the table and give them that opportunity. It could be win-win. It will be win-win. I mean, you can save on costs, etc. Lots of free technology like Zoom, etc. You're going to stay in contact. And then maybe when people come into the office, it's more about the team bonding, team building,
that's correct,
that kind of aspect. And then, you know, you can't put a value on that. I'd rather have that than a pay rise. Have the opportunity to spend time with my family. You know, it's just
definitely
priceless.
I think what you're saying, that people have really realized what matters, and the simplest things, the little things matter.
Exactly.
Family and friends, and that unity and community is more important than anything.
Exactly.
At this time, at this season, our health has been challenged. People have been scared about, are they going to make it through this pandemic? So they've looked at things very differently. Your job is, you know, to get paid, also to make you happy and you enjoy it, and it's something that you gain from it. But they've really taken a look at it and think, hold on, my health, my family means more than anything. You know, and they maybe would never have done that. So they wouldn't have checked and had a real deep think about that unless this had happened. So people's lives are going to be very different to what they planned it to be, or what it was before.
Yeah, I think it's quite natural. You get on that hamster wheel and then you just get busy. It happens to everyone, and you don't stop to think. And then you think, oh, you know, when I retire, I'll spend time with family, and I'll travel. And it's like, well, when you retire, you're not, you know, your body won't be the same. Your loved ones may not all be around. Your kids won't be around, and you know, you may not want to be spending all day at home with the other half.
It's true.
You know, so
it's very true.
Time to kind of, assess all of that, explore, you know, and build on that. I'm interested to see what happens when the retailers open up, because I think they're experimenting now with staggering commute. So historically, most cities have, well, what's the word? Rush hour.
That's correct.
Which I hate, rush hour.
I'm intrigued.
is, will there be a whole new pattern? Because you're being actively encouraged to avoid rush hour. Some of the advice going to business owners is to stagger your staffing to different types of shifts, etc. So I'm interested to see if, you know, how that works, because rush hour is stressful, and in terms of, you know, social distancing, not possible. So I'm interested to see some of the positive impacts coming out of the new ways of working. But many retailers have upped the online offering as well, which many consumers actually prefer. Believe it or not.
My lifestyle, I can't remember the last time I've gone into a boutique, you know, unless it's a local boutique, or in some areas they might have odds, you know, unique type of items. I haven't got the time. So that's all I've ever done.
So you're online most of the time?
Always online. And because I get used to, I know my body shapes, I kind of have an idea what suits and what doesn't. And then you can have your own little fashion show at home, you know, glass of wine, test it. And then if it doesn't work, you send it home. So I've always been in that mindset of, you know, online. I don't know if you know, but my background is corporate banking suit as well, legal and compliance. Yes. So when you're talking the language, I get it. And at the time I've done corporate finance. So there was a point when we helped and assisted ASOS to float. Now, As Seen on Screen was the first. And I remember looking at the prototype, and they showed us that soon you're going to be able to see somebody on a catwalk and you'll see what it looks like. And we was like, nah. And look at what's happened now. And they saw it back then.
I have a friend who's a stylist. I remember I had a conversation with them just a few weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago. And I said, you know, one of the challenges that she had when she was trying to help, a lot of her clients were corporate clients, etc. So she's speaking with them in central London, wherever they work, they're busy. And she's give them all this advice of things that they could do with their wardrobe. And I said, as soon as they get home, they're too tired to do any of that, you know? So unless you just actually go out and physically buy things for them, you never get to assess what's in their wardrobe or get them engaged in that way. And then I said to her, why don't you start engaging with them? They're at home right now. They're all at home and their wardrobe is just behind them. So why don't you engage with them? And as you said, you can do the color analysis or see what they've got in there, what they're not wearing, have them try different things on, make it fun, let them do fashion shows. And because they're at home, they will engage in a way that they would not have engaged if they just finished work and they were in the city. So it's about reimagining and redefining, you know, your business model, you know. And I think personally that's a lot of fun. I mean, I don't enjoy going to shopping centres and shopping in busy spaces. So someone like me, that sounds like a lot of fun, actually. So
that's an amazing business model.
Creative.
That's a really good business model, actually. I'm thinking I would love that, because then they're in your house, but they're in you can take your time, and it's in your time, isn't it? That's what it is. What people have now found, or what people have gained, is time from this experience. They never used to have that, as you said.
Exactly, time. And also in terms of, you know, when you talk about marketing, it's about speak to your customer, speak to your consumer. Actually, before I make this point, your earlier point about not sure what customers want, the solution is simple. Ask them. This is what I say to people. Ask them. You know, especially when you know, the change has been so, you know, significant. Don't guess, and don't just follow, you know, the trend or what, you know, the rhetoric that you hear on TV. I think just ask them, and they'll tell you. Actually, and they'll actually welcome the opportunity to engage with you, and you could make that something that's part of your brand experience. So suddenly you're not just, you know, happening to them. They feel that they're part of your journey, and you're including them in your key decisions. So that's kind of what I say to people who are not sure what their customers want and how they feel about the new normal. Ask them. They'll tell you. That information is gold dust, you know?
Wow. I'm looking at the time, and we've been talking for nearly an hour. Would you believe
it? Oh my God, I do talk a lot.
But I don't want to leave without asking you just a few nuggets of success. What do you feel will be good takeaways for people who are business owners, somebody that wants to start their own business? What would you say to them? Any nuggets of success? Because you've had a success, which is fantastic.
Yes, I think you really, you know, planning is key. The support of your family. This is something that people don't really talk about. I think it's very difficult to sustain a business if you don't have the support of your family, because once you embark on that journey, as any business owner will tell you, you really impact on them, and you often feel totally alone, because if you think about it, your staff are accountable to you, but who are you accountable to? One of the things, it just felt very lonely. If things went wrong or there were challenges, your teammates can just pass the buck and they look to you for a solution, but who do you look to? So the relationships and the support you have from your family is key. So have those conversations with them, engage with them before you start the family. Seek out a support network. I'm not sure why people don't do that. Business owners just think that, the support isn't out there. It's always been out there. I joined an organisation called Thai UK, and I think they were a charity, but they gave me a mentor who was a heavyweight, Sir Eric Peacock, and this chap would come and take me for expensive breakfast and sit down and open up his contacts to me. So seek out mentors, people who walk the walk, talk the talk, and who can help you, even just as a sounding board. You can create a board of advisors, so they don't work in your business with you, but you're accountable to them. You define the accountability. You might say, I'll give you monthly updates or quarterly updates, just something that gets you getting more disciplined about doing what we talked earlier, ongoing analysis, ongoing environmental scanning to make sure you're responding effectively to what's happening out there, and ongoing internal analysis to make sure you know what your weaknesses are and you address them and you build on your strengths, And I say go for it. I don't have any children, but one of the things that my friends with kids say is that when they go through the pain, if they knew before what it was going to be like,
they wouldn't have done it. I think that's everyone.
I think a business, it's like that. You just need to kind of get on with it, because if you kind of, it can be off-putting if you kind of get into too much detail about the challenges that you're going to have to face. But you just trust that you'll overcome them. Like you really will. You'll just take that step, put one foot in front of the next. You'll be fine.
That's amazing. No, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. You've given me some nuggets of success and wisdom and really food for thought. And thanks so much for the audience that's listening. I hope that you've been very valuable to them to really sit down and think. One of the major takeaways is to strategize, really take this time before you do go back out there to really work on the business instead of in the business.
Exactly.
Just one thing, what's the plans for the future? Where, how do we connect with you beyond this? And what's the plans for the future?
Anyone who, questions that we weren't able to address today, please send them through. So, if people want to send you questions after this session, send them through. I'm more than happy. I have the time and I enjoy it. If anyone wants to contact me directly, I'm happy to do that. I won't be sending you an invoice. I love that. More than happy to help. I mentioned my doctor's visit this week. So some of the reasons why I sold the business when I did was to address some of that. So I'm just grateful that I get to do that. And I have a few projects bubbling away that I'm going to kind of just grow them organically, just ideas, brainstorming, pulling things together with friends. I'm really enjoying that whole creative process. But let's watch this space.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Vivienne, to have you on my show today. You're very talented. You're very inspiring to myself and definitely the audience that's listening. And we'll definitely be speaking offline. I could definitely be tapping your brain and having some conversations. We can do a coffee straight after this when we all come out. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on my show.
Thank you for taking the time.
God bless you. Take care. All the best. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you ever so much for listening. Take care. Bye.